See. All right. Well, hi there. This is Noah Lantz with the Rain Gutter Association. I'm here with Ben Konowitz from LaPorte Seamless Gutters. Ben, I think we most recently met at, I believe it was GutterCon's 2024 event
Yes.
in the Four Winds Casino in New Buffalo, Michigan. And then were you at the casino or did we just meet you at
So
your gutter shop?
they did like a Ben Con event as part of GutterCon. And so
That's
then
right.
that was so they called it Ben Con, which again, my name is Konowitz, and so Ben Con it rolled off the tongue. I think that's hilarious. But Bren Vanderswag was like, "Hey, people really want to see your shop and how dialed in it is. Can we just do it around you?" And I was sure. And they had done it at Corey J's shop previously up in there in Minnesota at Advantage Seamless Gutter, and now Advantage Home Pros. And so yeah, to follow and to say, "Oh, Corey did it, now you get to do it." That was humbling. I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm all about that." But yeah, we had a great time, and it was valuable for me for sure.
Yeah, those shop tours are always fun. I've seen a number of different shops with my role being the director of the Rain Gutter Association. Yours really stood out to me in terms of how it was organized and also just how clean it was. And I'm wondering, and maybe this ties into the first question, which is the
Sure.
history of LaPorte Seamless Gutters, but I'm wondering how that shop system evolved over time. If you want to open up, maybe talking about the history of LaPorte Seamless
Sure.
Gutters, that'd be
Yeah.
helpful, and we can segue into the shop.
I'll give you the elevator pitch. Formed in 1982 by Tim and Seal Conowitz, my parents, with me bouncing on my mom's knee as she's answering the phones, and my dad doing all the estimates, all the installs, working 6 days a week. He never worked Sundays. That was his thing. But he built it from the ground up into what it was as of, I would say, 2011, 2012. So over the course of, whatever that first 30 years of business, it ended up being that we were doing about 800,000 a year, and he had two or three crews sometimes. We were not the highest price in the area by far. We were definitely a growing business, but a very slow growing business. My father just was a technician, and he really wasn't that ownership of like, oh, I'm going to delegate all of these things so we can grow. He just did it all himself, and there's value there because I can show you on paper that without a CRM and without even Google Docs for your phone log on a handwritten notepad in 1997, my father and mother and like two crews did $800,000 back then. So it's possible to do it. It's easier now with technology, obviously. And we've since 2011, I started with the company and I just joined as hey, I'm going to help you guys out in the office. I'm going to build your Facebook page, all this good stuff. And then I took over a sales role in 2012, and just my dad kind of threw me to the wolves there and said, go figure out how to sell gutter. I had never hung a gutter in my entire life. I still have not to this day. I think me and my dad maybe hung a garage one time just so he could show me what I didn't know. But I was that guy that had to like go in the parking lot and go to the scrap trailer and grab a hacksaw and just teach myself how to cut downspouts because I didn't want to be embarrassed, but I didn't know how to do it. So then since then in 2015, we were still about 1.1 million. And then by 2017, we did our first 2 million. So we about doubled the revenue, but I didn't do it by, I guess the tip of my cap here is that I didn't do it by adding five more crews. We just kind of automated some systems, enhanced our marketing, and took our internal systems and made them more efficient. And we were able to raise the guys' pay. We were able to raise our prices a little bit. All that kind of stuff goes hand in hand. But then from 2017 till 2025, we're going from 2.05 million to hopefully 2.45 this year. So another $400,000, but in 7 years. This is not exponential growth. But I tried to simultaneously step back from the business and have my people do more and also still grow the business. So for me, it wasn't about the monetary growth. It was about, my life goals, which were to do other things other than be a seamless gutter owner. And it's afforded me the opportunity. I've kind of I've made that path.
Sure, sure. You mentioned the company's grown slowly but steadily over the past, it sounds like 15 years. I am curious with the breakdown. So, for example, do you mainly focus on new construction, like putting gutter on new houses, businesses, or is it primarily driven by more consumer spending, people replacing their old gutter systems or maybe getting their very first one on their house?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of remove and replacement for homeowners directly. We're probably 80-20 split if I had to guess
Okay.
between homeowner and then contractor. We do I was just having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and I said if you looked at a chart and you saw the the more higher end the builder in the area is, the more likely they are to use LaPorte Seamless Gutter. And
Mm,
that's not by anything other than me just understanding our area and being around institutional knowledge of just knowing stuff. But if you are a custom builder and you truly mean that, then you're not using anybody else. We do custom work, we are that guy in the area. And so yeah, but then homeowners also know they call us directly and it's one of those things where too, if you go through a contractor, the contractor's just putting their money up on top of it. You're going through me, you're saving that money, but I'm charging you more retail pricing. So it's 6 of 1. A lot of times people think they're going to save a lot of money by going direct or save a lot of money by having one company all do it. It's all comes out in the wash.
Okay. Outside of gutters, does LaPorte Seamless Gutters offer any other services that are worth mentioning that contribute to that overall revenue figure?
So we did decide this winter to buy a soffit and fascia trailer, an enclosed one. We'd always done it with an open trailer, and it was just the guys just man, go load it, unload it. Like I get it, they didn't want that. So you go out and you outfit a $20,000 soft and fascia trailer with all the bells and whistles that you want to do, and have your guys design it. And so we've added, I think we've probably added about 400,000 this year to just the soft and fascia part of our business. And that also then means though that we were probably a little behind on gutter from last year. I
Oh,
think
interesting. Okay.
because of whatever the economy, whatever you want to call it. And I've been talking with a lot of guys in the industry, a lot of people, and it basically is kind of the same thing. Yeah, we're down a little bit here, but we're up when we offered a different service. So I think that that has definitely supplanted and helped us grow, and I'm glad that we did it. Couldn't have seen it coming really. Like, were we going to have an off year? And then also you are cannibalizing a little bit of your work because if you're doing soft and fascia, those are 3 or 4 day jobs instead of how many gutter jobs could I do in 3 or 4 days. So it's again, I say 6 of 1, half a dozen a lot of times, but you're never quite sure where it's coming from. I'm just very glad that we did it.
So that diversification then has been pretty essential to
Yes.
maintaining your growth, it sounds
Yes.
like.
Well,
Okay.
and it was born out of frustration. I didn't like going out and saying, we have rotten fascia board here, call a contractor and then call us back for the gutters. Because they're calling the contractor and he said, well, I got my own gutter guy or whatever. And we were just losing those jobs. And so now that's turned into, okay, we can do the woodwork, we can do the fascia cap, the soffit, the fascia, everything, and the gutters and downspout, gutter guard, leaf guard, whatever you want to call it. All that's now done in house. And we're still, quote unquote, only the metal guys, though. Like, we're not, even though you do a little wood replacement, we don't really say, if you're only looking to get your wood replaced, call us and then call somebody else. This is all in service of, can we wrap your house in metal? We really want to do that. Okay. We're not roofers and we're never going to be those guys. I don't want to get into standing seam roofs or metal siding. I love my little wheelhouse. We're very good at it. And I guess at this point in my career, I'm looking forward to dialing up the efficiencies more than I am dialing up the profit.
Interesting. Are you planning on offering additional services beyond the gutters and some of the other metal work moving forward? Like, has your mind been going in that direction at all, or are you pretty happy with where you're
Yeah,
situated?
we're if something comes, I think the next step for us would be to offer. We're starting to offer half round and box cutter, where we were doing probably 99% K style. Every once in a while, we'd get the call for the half round, and now we're marketing for it because we know how to. That's the thing. It's all born out of the fact that if I have to start all over here and say the reason that we're able to do all this is because I've got employees that have been with me for 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, 16 years, and 17 years as far as installers,
Hmm.
right? And so we have the longevity. So these guys know the systems inside and out and how we do things, but also my production manager, Dan, can build a house from the ground up. I know that he can do that, right? So if I say, hey, Dan, got a tricky one, what are we going to do here? How long is it going to take you? We can do that. But because we've got that kind of culture and that we've maintained that, it allows me to say, well, Dan and Donovan absolutely know how to hang half round. Let's next year we're probably going to buy a half round machine. We are not reinventing the wheel with training here. I don't have to train them to do that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, second generation business owners tend to get a bad rep. A lot of people feel like they were just handed the keys to success and they just took it over. I mean, from you, I'm really sensing that you've taken ownership over the business and made it something that's your own.
Yeah.
Which I'm obviously really glad to hear.
Yeah,
I
no,
am
the phrase that
curious.
I always say is that, and people get sick of me saying it at the shop, but
Yeah.
I say I was born on third base and I don't think I hit a triple. Like I know that my parents did a lot and I'm standing on their shoulders. So it's not lost on me that my people are the reason for that. And our shop is so clean because of that. I'm managing the ship, but I did not build the ship.
Sure. Yeah. I am curious, outside of the revenue growth and maybe adding the metal work that you mentioned, how has your company changed since you took it over from your father?
Man, that's a good question. I think the industry has changed because now with the not the invention, but with the reveal that there are other gutter companies out there, starting with Gutter Con back 5 years ago, and now with Gutter Summit, and with videos like this, I'm going to be on a podcast with Colin DeHaan and Frank Hannigan in a couple weeks, and I've done podcasts with other guys. The available knowledge of all of us is just going through the roof, and it's the reveal that other people exist, and I can ask those questions. My friend Mario up in Toronto, a little outskirts of Toronto, said that when I met him at the second GutterCon, he said I was going through. He's 10 years, 20 years older than me. He says, I was going through life like this and with my business and going to GutterCon, and now my eyes are open. So the industry has changed in that we have the ability now to just, hey, if you want to know what somebody's charging for half round copper, just call, I'm going to call Corey, or I'm going to call Jimmy, or I'm going to call Tina Hart, or I'm going to call you, and Tony, and I'm just going to ask, right? So that also it lowers the barrier of entry a lot of times. And so that's dangerous because you got guys that just think that they can run in and have a $2 million gutter business tomorrow, and they just have never worked anywhere in gutters. And again, that kind of race to get it done, that can be challenging because then we have guys. If you're listening to me right now, you've been in all the gutter installer Facebook groups. You see all the bullshit that goes through there. Is it box miter? Is it strip miter? Is it hand cut? Are you a real gutter? Who gives a shit? At the end of the day, are you doing right by your people? Are you doing right by your customers? And are you making enough money to live the life you want to live?
Hmm,
That's really what it comes down to.
nice. Going into the nuts and bolts of your business a little bit, what software systems do you use? And let's start with the basics. Like let's go with the ones that maybe the guy just starting off, we just mentioned the Facebook community groups,
Yeah.
isn't aware that he should be using QuickBooks, right? So like tell me a bit about the tech stack and how that works at LaPorte.
Sure. And this is where, so we just had this gutter meetup. I call it Getting Granular, and I've done three of them now. We just did one Thursday and Friday of last week where I had owners from Montana, South Carolina, Tennessee, Wisconsin, New York, all fly in. And we did this. We sat down and said, okay, as far as one of the things we talked about was tech. Where are you with tech? And right now, I think in the fourth gutter granule that we're going to be doing in March, that I'm bringing people in, I need to have a whole talk about too much tech. And why are we trying to allow AI and tech stacking is getting in the way of true business growth?
Hmm.
Because my God, in that room that I was talking to everybody, well, I use Zipify for Recruitify, and I use Ipify and Netify, and they all don't really talk to each other. So I got my phone ringing 19 times out of 20. So I get to be lucky enough to look back and say in 2015 when I first said, "Hey, Dad, we're going to go from a physical notebook to something called Google Docs." Right? And that's insane. If you talk to somebody right now in our gutter industry and you say, well, what are you using for communication? And it's like, well, I use WhatsApp or Slack, or I've got a Kanban board and all this. It's like, well, okay, do you need all that? We just started with a Google Doc and we just color coded it with like, here's the admin, that's her color. My color is the owner. And like, we just checked it every morning. And that was like, okay, that's where you start. So I don't want you, if you're listening to this and you are what someone would call Chuck on a truck, and you are literally trying to get off the freaking truck, right? The first thing you need to do is what works for you, not what somebody tells you is, oh, you're going to be so hands off. I liken it to gutter guard, right? In our industry, you get so in trouble. Never clean your gutters again. But nobody's telling you got to maintain the damn guards, right? So whatever thing that you need to use in your life, you still actually have to use it. You got to maintain the system. The system is only as good as the effort you're putting into it. So
Hmm.
for very, very basically, we started with literally a Google Doc that was only that, and we sent our quotes through Sage Peachtree, which is the antithesis of a QuickBooks, right?
Yeah.
That's all we were doing, and we got to $2 million doing it that way. So it's possible to get now. Of course, everyone is making fun of me because I didn't have a CRM at GutterCon, and I was like the last one raising my hand at 2 million because it went 500,000, a lot of guys, million, less hands, 1.5, almost nobody, 2 million, Ben, without a CRM. So now we use Jobber, and I'm very, very happy that we did that. We looked at Service Titan, which is a pretty robust system. So if you have a large company that, that's obviously something that you can do, but I think that's more about HVAC companies, really. For our industry, Jobber seems to be a really, really good one. There's Service Autopilot, there's House Call Pro, there's all these CRMs, but it's the one that you're going to use and use consistently. And even with Jobber, we don't use everything. We don't have an inventory control system and things like that yet. But Jobber and Google, by the way, we still use Google Docs. We still use it every single day. That's how we have a searchable database of institutional knowledge going back 20, well, now 10 years, I can just search and say like, oh, did he ever call us? Well, here's all the times he pops up, right? Now, obviously, you got to spell it right. But at the end of the day, Google Docs and Jobber have been the only real things we need. Obviously, we needed QuickBooks as well, but I've got an accountant and I've got a bookkeeper, and then my operations manager does a lot of the day-to-day reconciling and things of that nature. But as far as tech stack stuff, man, I use ChatGPT every single day of my life to organize my thoughts. I don't really use the generative side of it, and other than making funny pictures for my friends. But
Sure.
realistically, it's like I talk to text into it. And I say organize this into an email, and then I email it to whoever it needs to go to. And I'll always preface, I think that I get away with that because I'm able to say to them in the beginning of that email, "Hey, I am using ChatGPT for this, just to let you know." I'm not trying to fake that. I think that that's part of the reason we get in trouble is like you want to come across so professional and you use AI to do it and you sound fake. You sound like AI did it. So get ahead of that. Just tell them you're using AI. Who cares?
You recently won the 2025 David Wyatt Hero Award. Could you tell us a bit more about that award and what that means to you?
Uh, so I got the pleasure of meeting David at Gutter Summit a couple years back, and it just talk about just an organic human being. Like I didn't get to spend that much time with him, but the people that have met him and were around him just knew that he was just the epitome of just a good person. When we say that, it's in every, just pick a category. He was a good person there, family, business, employees, whatever, good person. And so when I went to Gutter Summit this time around and they presented me with this, um, I looked at it as this is in recognition of if you have a little bubble of influence over anything in your life, what are you doing within that bubble to be a good person to all the people in that bubble? And I think really David did a great job of representing that in his life. And unfortunately, in his passing, the silver lining is we have to look at him and say, let's let that be your example of a good person. And if they wanted to recognize me in that way, of course, it's the most humbling thing in the world to be given something where you don't think you deserve it. And I have just like all of you, right? Imposter syndrome every single day. I don't deserve that. I'm not good enough for this. I want to keep some stability and humbleness in my life, even though I think a lot of things I'm really good at. But that really pulls it into sharp focus when somebody hands you that and says, "We think of what he represented, and when we think of that, we think of you." I think I broke down and really had a good cry over that because it was one of the more impactful things that I've ever been handed in my life.
That's great to hear, man.
Yeah.
What other awards have you and LaPorte Seamless Gutter won?
So we've been recognized a couple of different times for a couple different things. I think one of the sillier ones and not the award itself isn't silly, but it's in recognition of like the silly shit that I do. It's called the Creo Award, and it's a creative arts award, and it normally goes to people that obviously artists and things that are very creative. But I founded a 501(c)(3) back in 2016. I think it's been going for longer than that, but it's called LaPorte Seamless Charity Corporation, and we do business as Big Comedy LaPorte. So we bring in stand-up comedians to the little theater in town. We charge $20, and it's like, oh, by the way, all the money goes to a good cause.
Hmm.
So then we stumbled into this thing called inappropriate trivia, and the Civic Auditorium, we found out, holds about 700 people. And it turns out 700 people in my town of 21,000 want to come out and play trivia that's R-rated. So we literally will show clips from R-rated movies, and I'll ask them really dirty questions about sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that stuff. We keep religion and politics out of it because I'm not into that. I don't care about that whatsoever. We tell people in the email if you got a Biden needs babies or fuck Trump or leave it at home. This is about like just silly fun.
Sure.
And then by the way, again, the money all goes to a good cause. So we're now over like $175,000 donated to various causes between $3,000 and $15,000 at a time. Some play structures in our town got put in. We put lights in on the skate park at the, like just all the stuff that you think about, like when you're growing up. Who's going to be that company that comes through? Like I want to have LaPorte Seamless Gutter on the kid's T-ball shirt, right? Because
Mhm.
that kid, by the way, that's probably like my best offline marketing advice is do the T-ball thing. Because when you were a kid and you played on the team, it doesn't matter if that company hasn't been around for 20 years. They'll be like, oh yeah, I played for Renault. They're still saying your company's name 20 years later. So when I run into people that I played ball with and my parents sponsored LaPorte Seamless Gutter, oh yeah, I played for LaPorte Seamless. back in my day. They still have the shirts. They still talk about it. And I think that that's the company I've always wanted to be is the local service-based business that had the hand lettered, the iron-on decals from back in the 80s. I love that so much. So that creativity for doing inappropriate trivia and giving back has just really opened up a lot of doors for us. And I do talk about like it's okay to have a charitable arm of your company that does weird shit and gives back in a different way than just giving a discount on a gutter guard. And I encourage you to do something different than just, Habitat for Humanity, amazing. If you want to do some discounted work for them or free work for them, please do it. But please think outside the box of what is possible now that you do have a kind of a platform and maybe a little money to start leaning into other areas of the community that you can, score some big wins in and have some fun doing it.
Going back to the question of community a little bit, let's go into the business community and talk about some of the events running in the gutter space. I mean, for me at least, these seem relatively new. I started working in gutters about 7 years back, and then I stepped away to do some other stuff for a little bit, but I've always kept my feet wet.
Sure.
So we got obviously the big ones. We have Gutter Con, the Gutter Growth event. I'm wondering what other ones you attend, and they don't even have to be gutter specific. They could be like Metal Con or general contracting conferences.
Sure. So obviously, if you've never been to GutterCon, you've never been to Gutter Summit, I highly recommend them both. I mean, I think that it's a big enough pond where those two events can easily exist in the same space, and there's probably room for another one if I'm being honest with you, because I look at it as every single time I go to any of them, I am always recharged and energized about what I can bring back to my business. And so to that end, I've gone to a Grant Cardone seminar. I've gone to, I think that I've got next year, I think I want to go to a Tony Robbins event. I think that it's important to have, for me as a business owner, just stepping outside of our industry specific stuff and
Mm.
getting more, let's call it rah-rah. Maybe I do need a little rah-rah because when you're the owner, there's not too many people above you checking on you and telling you what you should be doing. So I consult with a lot of businesses now and a lot of gutter companies, and part of that is what are you doing to like make sure that your why is still relevant and valid for you. Sometimes that's not going to GutterCon or Gutter Summit. Sometimes that is going on vacation with your loved ones and reminding yourself why you're all doing it. So I don't want anybody to get too wrapped up in, go to MetalCon, go to RoofCon, go to this con, go to that con. But if you go to the two industry conferences every single year, I think that is more than enough to get your feet fully entrenched and wet in those industries because you're going to have so many takeaways that you can implement for the next 6 months. And I love that they're not at the same time, right? The Gutter Summit is in the fall, and then Gutter Con is in the spring. Those are great. If I could talk to Brent and Grant, I'd say keep them separated so that I don't have to go back to back and then have to implement everything that I learned over the course, right? But yeah, I don't know. I've been to the huge convention down in Nashville. That was a power washing and gutter cleaning convention. That was pretty cool, honestly. I think that I just needed to see it once. I've been to the International Building Association, the International Builders Show that's out in Vegas, and they switch between Vegas and Orlando. I've done that 3 times. Just to get your feet wet on trends, right? What builders are really getting into and the different types of design. The gutter guy is always one of the last, us and landscapers, right? We're like the last people on the project. And so we were forgotten about a lot of times. And so going to these larger shows, if there is a benefit there, it's to kind of stick your neck out and say, like, if you're seeing this technology, how does that work in our industry? What takeaways can I get with, oh, this cabinet maker is doing it this way and streamlining his process doesn't mean I can't take something away from my shop from the cabinet maker. I think Steph Curry's the one of the best athletes that's ever lived. But if you ask him, I've listened to podcasts with him. He did not just play basketball growing up. He played tennis. He played golf. He was well rounded. So if you're just going to go to GutterCon, just going to go to Gutter Summit, that's fine. But you also need to do something, and it's not even seminar related, but you have to do something to get yourself more well rounded in all industries, not just gutter.
Awesome. Going back to one of the earlier questions I had about the history of LaPorte Seamless Gutters and your role as a second generation business owner, you mentioned that a lot of the people you've had working with you have stayed around for a long time. I mean, I think I heard anywhere between 2 to 7 years, maybe longer if I'm
17,
remembering.
17 years.
17 years. Okay. One of the things that we find that a lot of gutter companies struggle with is finding reliable talent. They'll hire like people, they won't show up to the job site, or they just don't stick around for a long time. And I'm wondering what the key has been in your business to keeping reliable talent around for the long haul?
Sure. Uh, I used to not even have an answer for that. I used to say, well, people like me and they want to work with me because I'm cool and I'm fun. I used to really believe that. And now looking back through just the data and say, why did people probably stay? It's because we've been pretty good about holding people accountable long term. So I am a pushover when it comes to a lot of my guys, and I know that. But there are some hard and fast truths that I learned through the hiring process and what you can tolerate and what you can't tolerate. You have to realize that if you're going to tolerate something from an employee that on paper you would recommend another business to not tolerate, then what does that say about you, right? What does that say truly about your business? So I encourage anybody to look at your processes when something bad happens or when an employee does something you really don't like, and you just take emotion out of it, and you take yourself out of it and take the employee out of it and say, employee A works for company A, and it has nothing to do with me, and this was the offense or this is what they did. How should that company react? And a lot of times it's like, well, I'd let that person go. Then why aren't you letting that person go at your shop, right? And if not, are you suspending them? Are you because again, and you have to have expectations and hold some level of accountability. And one thing I've really learned is it's never too late to start that stuff. So people say like, well, we've been letting them clock in late for 2 years. How do I? But the answer is very simple. It's like, yeah, we've been having that for 2 years up until yesterday, Tuesday the 9th, and now today's Wednesday the 10th. So from now on, here's what's going to happen if that happens. And does that make sense to the employee? And the employee says, well, not really. Okay, break down why don't you need to be on time? You're getting into the conversations about there's not just a hard and fast rule, but you have to explain to everybody why it's a rule in the first place.
Hmm.
What's the impetus for having that at all? And as long as everybody aligns with that core value set of like, oh, if I am late, then it does show disrespect to my fellow coworkers. And it does show disrespect to the boss, who, by the way, treats us pretty well with wage and all the other things that he does. So I don't want to be disrespectful. I do want to be here on time. I do want to show up. I do want to do my part. I do want to have Ben's back because I know he's got my back. All that starts though with accountability. And I'm getting better at it. I'm still not great, but I want to let everybody know that if you're with me, we are ride or die until you want to leave. Not until I will never not have a place for you here as long as you're doing the job and you've got a good attitude. It will be up to you to use this as a stepping stone to the next thing or to stay with me for the rest of your career. In that interview, when I sit across from, like me and you are sitting across from each other, and I tell them in the interview, this is probably the most interaction you and I are going to have right now until your first quarterly review. I meet with all my installers quarterly. And then I've got a production manager, operations manager, and office manager that handle the business on the day to day. I have two salespeople that handle the sales. Okay. So for me to you, you're not going to have to impress me. Everybody else I just mentioned, that's who you have to impress. They're going to give me the feedback and let me know if you're staying or going. But by and large, you're impressing them, not me. And then on top of that, it's am I holding that person accountable? Because again, if they start fucking up, let's say, and I don't hold them accountable, well, then the next guy said, well, I don't have to do that work. He's not working hard. I don't have to either. We've really gotten away from that and really started to hold people accountable in the right way, and that's been the difference. Um, and then people like me, and they think I'm cool.
Cool. Um, just to wrap this up a little bit, obviously we're dealing with an unusual economy at the moment. Something like half of all consumer spending right now is being driven by the very top 10% of income earners in the United States at the moment. Given that LaPorte Seamless Gutters has been around for 40 years, what advice would you give to other gutter contractors to help weather the economic winds and a potential recession?
Absolutely. I think the biggest takeaway that I've learned from my father and from my mother, who have gone through since 1982, right? I mean, when they got into business, we were just coming off like the gas crisis of the late 70s, right? And then we had the economic downturn of 2007, the housing market crashed. We've been through all that, COVID, everything. Um, and my father has always said, and I stand behind this, that gutters are not recession proof, but they are recession resistant.
Hmm.
And so you're in a good industry, first and foremost. If the economy tightens up, people don't travel, they don't go to buy new houses, but they start to improve the things that they do have. On that end of things, gutters seem to be financially viable, where maybe a full house of siding and a new roof is not. So
Hmm.
if your ticket items are $3,000 to $5,000 rather than 15 to 20, think about what that means to somebody who is maybe living more on the not check to check, but somebody who is not wealthy by any means. What can they afford? Well, they can probably afford gutters. So I think that that's the key takeaway is it's going to be fine. We are recession resistant, but also my mom and dad have always said you got to figure out how many jobs that you need to stay solvent and profitable enough to live your lifestyle the way you want to live it. Everything outside of that and above that is icing on the cake, right? But if you can look at yourself and say, these are my bills, let's reverse engineer this thing. These are my bills. This is the lifestyle I want. How many crews, how many people do I need to make that happen for me? If you start there, everything else is butter. And I think you're going to find that as long as you're living within your means, a lot of guys out there can do one crew to just to live, to make it okay. So no matter what happens, they're not going to take your fucking birthday away. Okay, you're still going to be fine. You're going to be in business. It's just going to be a little hard for a little while, but stay the course because it's like the stock market. You invest in yourself and you wait, and that's all you need to do. If you're worried about explosive growth, 10xing your business every single year, I would be worried if I was you right now. That's probably not going to be the thing that's happening. But if you're understanding and where your margins are and what you're comfortable with, isn't that the goal?
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for joining this interview. Looking forward to connecting with you soon.
Heck yeah, man. I really sincerely appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Okay, so that'll be a different recording. And then now I'm just curious about the safety perspective. So again, we write these toolbox talks. I interview real life gutter contractors or find news stories and share them within the association. Sometimes outside the association too, if it's a really powerful one. Like I wrote one with Michael Wood about, I think it was like two cousins or something of his that died on an
Yeah,
accident.
he was at the first Gutter Granular that we did, and we got to hear that story in person. It's been 30 years. He still tears up about that. I mean, it's a very impactful thing.
Yeah. So I'm just curious if you have any stories you'd like to share about an installer getting hurt, maybe even killed on a job,
Sure,
what you learned, and then I'll write up a toolbox talk. I'll share that with you, obviously.
sure.
But yeah, just take the floor. Could be
So
anything, by the way. The weirder the story, the better, because
yeah,
I got tons
uh,
of ladder
no,
stories.
I bet you. So the for us, we do a safety meeting from we've got the OSHA manual, and we pull a safety meeting. We pull that together. We the guys that are in attendance, they write down that they were there. So that's we have an SOP for that. Okay. That being said, it is so jarring to realize that there are so many different things and ways that you can get hurt on a job site that you don't even think about. My production manager broke his ankle stepping off of the van and just there was a little bit of a divot in the road that he didn't see, and he broke his ankle just stepping out of the freaking van, right? Uh, some of the more humorous ones that we've had to file incident reports for some reason in Northwest Indiana, a lot of people like koi ponds. Okay, I don't get it, but people love these koi ponds even in Northwest Indiana. But what that means is they freeze in the winter. And if they don't freeze in the winter, they still have a snow cover that goes over them a lot of times. So if you're in somebody's backyard and these koi ponds are just sitting there and they're not very deep, they're only like 12 inches deep, and you're in the back walking around a house, you're going to step in one and you're going to break right through that ice and go right down into it. And we've had so many guys that have stepped in a freaking koi pond and then thought they were stepping out of it and stepping further into it because the snow on the ground here for us is ridiculous. So the number of incidents, the reports that we actually have that said stepped in yet another koi pond. So we try to mark them, but a lot of times if you go out there and it's February when you're quoting the job and you're doing it in late February, you have no idea. We had one where an old man had buried money in his backyard, and so the wife, after he passed away, she tried digging it all up, so there's just holes everywhere. Well, I was out there in October, and so there was just leaf cover everywhere, and I stepped down in a 6 inch hole. Just because you're looking for your dead husband's money? Like what are we doing here? You're booby trapping your backyard. So we've fought really like yes, you need to worry about ladder safety. That's huge, of course. But that's in your hand and you're really paying attention because you're doing something. But you're just physically walking somewhere and not paying attention to the ground or where you're stepping. That is honest to God, where we get more injuries is just walking around the house than anything else.
Huh, that's a good, that's good. That's good. I like that. Um, yeah, I guess what processes or procedures do you follow maybe during the estimate
Yeah,
potentially
so,
to
and that is
come out ahead of those
100% what it is.
issues?
Yeah, when you are because of company cam, through Jobber, our guys are documenting way more these days. And so it's, yes, it's the CYA, the cover your ass stuff, oh, that's broken before I got here. I don't want to be responsible for it. But also, hey, watch out for this thing. We've taken pictures of the dog to let them know there's a dog here. Take
Yeah.
pictures of here's where the gate's locked, so don't try to jump over it. Here's how to unlock the gate. Having just our sales guys both came off of install. So they both know what it's like to try to install something. So our not necessarily our SOP for it is more likely the question is, Alex, when you're out there estimating a job, you need to actually ask yourself the question, how am I as Alex going to install this job? Not how the installer is going to do it, but how would you do it? Because if you have to walk it through how you would do it, then where would you walk? Is it safe enough to do so, right? Take pictures of the thing that's not safe where you would have to set up at. That's been a game changer for us. So the documentation, and then in the morning when he's going over on the iPad, hey, here's the job. Oh, and watch out for this. So getting ahead of it in the first place, it's solved 90% of our problems.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Let's see. I think I can stop the recording here.